In 1913, the language, Ukrainian language, was banned from all public schools in Alberta, Canada, which was home to the largest Ukrainian diaspora community in the New World at the time. Bilingual Ukrainian English schools existed in Alberta until 1913. 1913, when they were banned as a result of nativist backlash. Trippy shit. So right now we're doing a timeline, just Russia, but this is about the Bolsheviks and the Ukraine. What is the relationship between the Bolsheviks and the Ukraine? I heard that Kayla Maupin had said something about, the Bolsheviks are always great about the Ukrainian, encourage their nationalism, encourage their language, encourage their culture. The Bolsheviks, they've always been great when it comes to Ukraine. Now, we've seen throughout history, we've seen that pretty much every single Russian czar hated the Ukraine. Peter the Grape, Catherine the Grape, Nicholas 1 and 2, Alexander 1, 2, and 3, all these czar bastards, they banned the Ukrainian language in print, books, and schools, in official declarations and businesses, and just shitting on, the Ukrainian culture, basically to get them to become Russians. So, shitting on the Ukrainian people. You're Ukrainian? Ugh, it's almost like the French, like looking down on everybody else. What makes you better than everybody? Nothing, just that you're an arrogant fuck, that's it. You just one day decide to become an arrogant fuck, and like Abercrombie and Fitch, people are like, well, if they think they're better than me, maybe they are. I better buy some Abercrombie and Fitch. See, there was a constituent election, Bolsheviks invalidated. I'm just going to read some, names and dates. Here we go. Prohibition of celebrating the 100th anniversary of Taras Shevchenko, the decree of Nicholas II. Prohibition of the Ukrainian press. That happens in 1914. 1916, there's the Russification campaign in Western Ukraine. Western. That's on Lviv, right? So the prohibition of the Ukrainian word, education, church. May 1915, major Russian defeat in Galicia. Criminals are running Russia. Okay, damn. Major Russian defeat in Galicia. People are pissed. What the hell happened in Galicia? Nah, it's because the damn criminals are running shit. December 30th, 1916, Rasputin is going to get killed by Prince Felix Yusupov. Prince Felix Yusupov. And then we get to the February Revolution. And I actually have very few notes on the February Revolution. But ultimately, the Tsar goes down. The Tsar goes down. Okay? So the Romanovs are going to be no more. And if you can learn Rurik Dynasty, Romanov Dynasty, it covers about 1,000 years of Russian history. But this is modern, Russian history. And really, Russia doesn't enter the modern age until, after the Russian Revolution. So the Tsar needed to go down. The Tsar did go down. Now Lenin and Trotsky are licking their chops. And so February Revolution, I don't have many notes on it, but the Tsar goes down, okay? And there's some other events because it looks like the Tsar actually goes down in March. So why are we saying it's a February? It's October and February Revolution actually happened in November and March. It's because they were using that old fucking calendar, right? So, okay. March 8th, 1917. There's strikes and riots break out in Petrograd, a.k.a. St. Petersburg. March 10th, 1917. There's a general mutiny of the troops, and that sealed the fate of the old regime. Once you had the peoples all pissed off, and now the troops aren't going to listen to the damn Tsar. March 11th, 1917. The Duma refuses to dissolve via royal decree. So the troops aren't listening. The Duma's not listening. Nobody's listening to the Tsar anymore. Everybody's just turned their damn back on the Tsar. March 12th, 1917, a provisional government headed by Prince George Lvov is formed. The new government included Paul Miliukov, Alexander Guchkov, and Alexander Kerensky. We're going to see Kerensky's name a couple times. March 15th, 1917, Tsar Nick II abdicates for himself and his son, but gives the crown to his brother Michael. March 16th, 1917, Tsar Michael in turn gives his crown to the provisional government, pending an election by Constituent Assembly. You know what? That Constituent Assembly was fucking brilliant because, yeah, the Bolsheviks should have done the Constituent Assembly. It's democracy. They're just going to come in and take power, and we're just going to pretend that March 21st, 1917, Finland is recognized as independent by the provisional government. March 30th, 1917, the confiscation of imperial and monastery lands by the provisional government. April 12th, 1917, Estonia is granted autonomy by the provisional government. April 16th, 1917, Lenin arrives in Petersburg, Russia, aboard a sealed train along with Zinoviev, Radek, and Lunacharsky. And they arrive in Petrograd from Switzerland. And it was on a German train. Came in on a German. We're at war with Germany. You goddamn traitor. What the hell is up with this? May 1917, Trotsky arrives in Russia. He had been in England and the United States. June 23rd, 1917, the Ukrainian People's Republic was declared. June 23rd, 1917. But the country was split between nationalist and social groups. The first sought total independence from Russia. The second, driven by the peasant class, was in sympathy with Bolshevik land reform and working class unity. Poland, Austria, Hungary, and Germany all had an interest in Ukraine, which possessed of the richest agricultural land in Central Europe. The writer of this analysis saw the various powers in the state of delicate standoff, with each party holding back for now from sending troops into the country. June 26, 1917, the local Rada takes over the Ukraine. Meaning the Ukrainians take over the Ukrainian land. The local Rada is the Ukraine. It's the local legislative assembly. It's the governing body of the Ukraine. But the Bolsheviks ain't going to have it. And it's also socialist. The local Rada that declares the Ukraine independent, they were socialist. So the Bolsheviks coup d'etat a bunch of socialists. June 29th to July 7th, 1917, the Russian offensive against German Austrians ends in failure. Kerensky was the Minister of War. So that's interesting right there. Kerensky is still carrying the war on, but you got Lenin and shit coming in from goddamn Germany, and people have other problems too. Why are we fighting Germans and shit? June 30th, 1917, General Kaledin is established as the hetman of the Don Cossacks. July 16th, 1917, Kerensky becomes the Prime Minister of Russia. Not Soviet Russia. After Tsar Russia. July 16th to the 18th, 1917, a failed coup d'etat. The failed July coup d'etat. Lenin and Trotsky attempt to take power by force. Trotsky is jailed. Lenin escapes by hiding in Finland. July 20th, 1917, the Finnish declaration of a complete independence. So Finland is now completely independent. July 20th, 1917, Prince Lvov quits. Alexander Kerensky takes his position. August 3rd, 1917, the British were first to occupy Vladivostok, and then the French and the Japanese and the American forces occupy Vladivostok soon after. September 4th, 1917, the Americans arrive at Murmansk. Merman. 1917, September 9th at 14, Kornilov is fired by Kerensky and attacks Petrograd, but Kerensky is victorious. October 1917, the majority of the Petrograd Soviet were Bolsheviks, so once again, Lenin attempts a coup d'etat. November 6, 1917, the Bolsheviks take power by force. Kronstadt sailors, Red Guards, Petrograd soldiers, and revolutionaries take the Winter Palace by storm. They arrest the provisional government. Alexander Kerensky is able to escape. November 7th, 1917, the Second All-Russian Congress of Soviets put an official stamp on the Bolshevik takeover. Is it okay? It sure is. We all think it is. November 25th, 1917, elections of the Constituent Assembly returned with 420 social revolutionaries approved and 225 Bolsheviks approved. So the social revolutionaries have the majority. The social revolutionaries have the vast majority. 66% of the people were on the side of the social revolutionaries. How the fuck did the Bolsheviks hold on to power? They didn't win the election. The only election that was had was this constituent assembly election, and they lost. And they won some seats, right? That's a third. It's not like they're like the parties that got 0 seats, so they're a very important part of the conversation. But they're saying, well, we got 200 seats. That's basically everything. No, there's 420. That's social revolutionaries. So from 1917 on, should have been ran by the social revolutionaries, not the Bolsheviks. November 28th, 1917, workers are given control of the factories. November 20th, 1917, shortly after the early November Bolshevik coup in Petrograd and a similar event in Kiev, the Central Rada issued the Third Universal on November 20th, 1917, declaring a Ukrainian People's Republic in Kiev and condemning the Bolsheviks' initiated disorder in Petrograd as politically illegal. They're totally correct here. The Central Rada, they declared independence. They ratified their Declaration of Independence. Now you have this November. They're basically coming back again with the Third Universal. They're saying, okay, we're independent, but we're independent as a Ukrainian People's Republic. The UNR, Ukrainian People's Republic. What's N? Is N people in Ukraine? Because the legal government in Petrograd was dissolved, the Central Rada had no other choice but to declare its autonomy with its own regional government that was previously approved by the Russian Provisional Government. The UNR refused to recognize the newly installed Soviet government, which in turn caused attention within the Central Rada. The Bolshevik government demanded an all-Russian union. The Bolsheviks faction convened an all-Ukrainian Congress of workers, soldiers, and peasants, Soviets, in Kiev in December, demanding recognition of Savnarkom from the Central Rada. Demanding recognition of Savnarkom from the Central Rada. December 9th, 1917, there's the revolt of the Don Cossacks, led by Kornilov and Kaledin. December 11th, 1917, Lithuania declares independence. December 15th, 1917, Moldavia declares independence. December 17th, 1917, all the church property is going to get confiscated by the Bolsheviks. December 25th, 1917. Finding themselves to be a small minority at the Congress of 2,500 delegates, the 100 Bolsheviks and a few others left to join a Congress of local deputies in Kharkiv, which they renamed the All-Ukrainian Congress of Workers, Soldiers, and Peasants Soviets. They declared the Bolshevik government of Ukraine with Christian Rakovsky, oh my God, Rakovksy as its head on December 25th, 1917, claimed that the government of the Ukrainian People's Republic were outlaws. And that ends 1917 on a cliffhanger. 1933, Stalin's telegram, he stops Ukrainianization. Yeah, Stalin doesn't like Ukraine. He's killed 4 million Ukrainian people in the Holodomor. 2014, the Ukrainian language is still being suppressed in the Crimea and the Luhansk and the Donetsk. So they're still cracking down on the Ukrainian language. So what are my conclusions for 1917? What are my conclusions? Coming up in a minute.